Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, evening, afternoon, wherever it is you're listening. On this call, we have all sorts of time zones, so a little confusing. My name is Susie Terse Brown, and I am very happy to be talking today with um, my fellow blobbers. How about everybody say hi?
Hi.
Hey,
Hi, everyone.
So on this call, we have Angie, Shoroya, and Lisa. And so we're super excited to be talking about a topic that every single person who is in the Foreign Service would experience. And that is your entry story and how you joined the State Department. But first, this kind of came around because we had someone suggest to us this topic, which we love suggestions. We're very good at coming up with topics ourselves. However, we love suggestions as well. So if you have a topic or a situation or something that you would like for us to talk about, please do email us or give us a comment, and we're happy to consider. So a couple of us on this recording are moving this coming summer. And so this particular topic is quite appropriate as reflecting on our sort of like past stories. Angie, I know you're moving.
I am moving. We're heading out in just a couple months. So we've been here for 3 years and getting ready to head back to Virginia which was where we started from. Should I start talking about how
Yes,
we
yes.
okay. So my husband was in the military. So Bill was in the military and I wasn't. I was a stay-at-home mom at that time and teaching a few little classes. And so our kids were very young. We had 3 children and we decided to um, leave the military after 11 years. So we had a great deal of benefits, and that was a difficult decision to leave the military because it's really about the benefits, right? And life overseas, we had lived overseas for a long time. And so you either decide probably around 10 years in the military to commit and continue as a career or to get out. And I think it was a big decision, but we were already thinking about the Foreign Service as an option because at that point, um, Bill had completed a couple degrees I think he had gotten his one advanced degree, maybe a master's at that point. And so we thought, we'll try the Foreign Service life, and which would be similar. We were imagining that it would be similar to military life, and left that there would be a community when you arrive. There would be kind of a support system in place. There would be housing would be included, and it would be different rather than us trying to move overseas and secure a job independently and figure out life without a support network. So we knew we were interested in that. And we moved back to Virginia. Bill worked for a while and took the Foreign Service exam and did the interview and went through the whole process. And then we got Turkey and ended up moving to Turkey with 4 kids at that point. So that's how we started. And that was back in 2007. It's been a while.
And Angie, do you think that coming from the military, do you feel like that was an easier adjustment, or was it like unrealistic expectations, or how was the adjustment?
I think for us, it was easy in the way that we had already lived overseas. We had already experienced kind of that being in a new place with a different language, with all not knowing your way around, trying to navigate where to go and how life was going to be. I think we had imagined that it was maybe a little bit more upscale. I think there there's some we've talked about this before. There's some sense of the foreign service and diplomatic life being a little bit on the glamorous side somehow, and you don't really know that it's not actually always that glamorous.
Every day isn't like the Marine Corps ball.
Exactly, Lisa. It was like, yeah, I wasn't wearing a floor length gown every time I went to the embassy. So no.
There does seem to be this glorified image of what foreign service really is overseas. And I think that's hilarious that to manage expectation, dear listeners, you will not be wearing a ball gown very often. And so when it does happen, it's a very nice occasion.
And I
Yeah.
highly recommend once a year, go to the Marine Corps ball. That part's fun.
Yeah. Well, Lisa,
There's
what
so
about
much
your
that
story?
is fun, but yeah, I think it's still there's still a lot of complicated stuff, and you're wading through litter, and stepping in sewers, and like that is also part of daily life. So
But that's
you
not on
gotta
the selling poster. That they don't actually talk about that sort of stuff on the like
no,
recruitment video.
no. Yeah, Lisa, tell us your story.
I am pretty sure that I am one of the most naive people who ever entered the world of foreign service life. When I look back at who I was in 2011, 2012, I just shake my head. I'm like, I knew nothing, like nothing. And I had a whole life before meeting John and joining the foreign service. And by that I mean like I was married, my husband had a brain tumor, passed away. Like I had like this full life, and then got into my 30s, met John, knew he was working at the State Department, heard foreign service. I remember a friend being like, "Oh, I have a friend who wants to be a foreign service officer. Cool. That's really cool." I'm like, "Yeah, that's really cool." And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, I really don't actually know what that means. But I never said that out loud. And in June of 2012, we did our first move to the Philippines. And just before that, I had gotten the opportunity to train in this unique EFM position at FSI to be an instructor for some of their customer service courses. And I went to FSI. There was 2 weeks of training with 11 other EFMs who traveled in from all over the world. And I heard all of these acronyms, and I had no idea what they meant. And I remember the trainer, we were doing some role plays, and somebody was complaining about their travel voucher, and they weren't getting reimbursed and all this stuff. And I'm like providing great customer service, and I'm offering all these things. And I remember the trainer afterwards being like, "Yeah, we can't do anything that you just offered to that. That was really lovely customer service, but we can't actually do any of that in real life." And yeah, I just had no clue. So I feel like I've learned a lot along the way, and jumping into the Philippines, Manila, as a big, crazy, crowded Asian city for our first post was overwhelming and also like super adventurous. And I I think about a few key people who came alongside, and one woman in particular, I remember her just like hearing a little bit about my story, and she was like, "Oh, honey, let's have lunch. Let's talk." Yeah, so I mean, that's a little bit about my entry to this world.
But I mean, part of it is, managing expectations. And I think both of you have illustrated that, like, people don't really know what it's really like. But I think also being so open to new experiences helps a lot. Yeah. Shroya, what about you?
Well, ladies, I have to beg to differ. I think the diplomatic life, it was glamorous and still is glamorous when you start from the bottom of being a Peace Corps volunteer wife.
Yes.
So we joined Peace Corps soft diplomacy, but under the mission, right? After my husband, he was in Guinea, West Africa. After his first year of service there as a Peace Corps volunteer, I joined him. We got married in between his year 1 and 2. And I was crazy enough to cross the Atlantic Ocean and live in this remote village. Well, actually, I lived in the city and he was in the village. And then he would travel to see me every weekend, 8 hours on a bush taxi. Much love. So we survived that. But oh, how we looked for that year and was so envious of all the people in the diplomatic community. Oh my gosh, they got turkeys at Thanksgiving. They had parties. They went to the Marine Ball without us. Yes. And so we just kind of thought, this is a nice life. And so I ended up getting pregnant while I was overseas, came back to the States, and we just go, yeah, that's the way we want to raise our kids. We want to raise them overseas. We want them to see the world. And I just felt like there, as a family who's African American, being in Africa, we were able to see people for who they were, not like there was wealth, there was poverty, there was in between, there was just people. You know, we didn't have to feel like we were under a microscope. And so we felt like this is the way we wanted our boys to be raised. And so we took the big leap maybe after, I think, 5 years of being, when we returned to the States. It took about 5 years for my husband to get a position at headquarters in Peace Corps. And then eventually he got to be the country director in Cameroon, Central Africa. And so that was our first post with 3 children. And oh my gosh, now that part, to land there in dry season was not glamorous. And I had no clue, you know, Peace Corps doesn't have the support like for spouses as maybe state. You're not going through training or anything. So I didn't know what to do with myself. I was so like taken aback. You know, it's French speaking and English speaking. I'm trying to think what I really missed after about a year was humor. Like we would go different places and people would say things and whole crowd would start laughing. And I just like, what did they say? Why was that funny? So I remember that adjustment. However, going in and out of the embassy and all the luxuries that we didn't get as you know, under the Peace Corps umbrella was really nice. And we never got like, I never felt like we felt privileged. We just, or entitled. Yes. We always still stayed appreciative of just all the blessings that we were able to get in the diplomatic community. But one thing I remember, because when we were in Guinea, and we didn't have any money, you know, we're married on his Peace Corps budget. I did work for the international school, so we were really pressed for money. And when we saw those turkeys come in and we didn't get one, it was so disappointing. But the missionaries in that country were so friendly to us. And that just always stuck in our head. We were like, we have to be kind to missionaries because they were kind to us. And so from that country on, all the countries we went to, we would always make sure we had Thanksgiving dinner for the missionaries so they could have a real turkey.
Oh,
So
that's so cool.
we enjoyed that.
That is so cool.
One thing I really like about what you just said, Sharoya, is you know, making friends outside of that little like diplomatic embassy bubble. And I do feel like every time you have that opportunity to kind of meet new people, and my boys are so tired of me saying this, but like you honestly can never have too many friends, right? And you never know who you can connect with, and maybe their life experiences are different than what you might have in the Foreign Service or whatever, but what value you meet in those different people in the community, missionaries or international or NGO employees. Like there's so many different folks you can just be like, well, why are you here? That's really amazing. And then of course the folks who are from that country as well.
Susie, to that point of having more friends, in Cameroon, Yaoundé is Francophone, that area. So I really struggled. I think that's what I really was struggling with, was the loneliness of not being able to articulate myself and develop close relationships. And so it didn't, like my mind did not change until many years into being in West Africa, Francophone countries, and I still wasn't really good at French. And I listened to this polyglot guy. He was on being interviewed, and he said he was able to learn languages because all he did was tell himself, now I'm going to have more friends. And so all he cared about was having more friends. So he just spoke to have friends, not to be fluent, not to sound wonderful, articulate, but to have friends. And that changed the game for me. So I hope someone listening who's frustrated with language would just make the determination, I am just going to make a friend. And so I mean, I have a hilarious story where I went to the grocery store and I was trying to get lamb. And so I knew the term like for Lamb of God in church, right? And I couldn't remember the lamb part. And so I was saying of God in French, of God. And they're looking at me like, what? No, so I'm in front of the butcher counter. I'm like, blank de jeu. Everybody is behind the counter is like, okay, what is she saying? What did she say? Finally, somebody came from the back, and I can't even remember the word, but he says it in French. And I was like, that's it, that's the word. And everyone starts clapping, and that really made me feel good. I wasn't trying to be perfect. I was just trying to communicate using what I already knew and transfer that. So.
And to that
That was a
point, I
great
do think
story.
almost
good.
everywhere on this planet, people don't care about your grammar, and they don't care if you have, the imparfait, parfait, just like they just want to communicate. And so just trying and getting yourself out there and making mistakes or whatever. Like I do think, I mean, maybe you do know the word for lamb, and you can go to the grocery store and order your lamb, but like just communicate. That's really just it's a tool to connect, not to speak beautifully, and maybe you do, and that's awesome. But like, Lisa, I know you've studied languages.
Yes. I just got back from a week in France, and French is the language that I've played with the most. I say played with because I still struggle. And when you said,
Lisa, is it à genoux? What's the word for lamb?
now you're going to put me on the spot. I'm just going to be
Okay,
like,
okay.
because if anybody's going to judge poor language, it's going to be the French.
Yes. But
For
French
sure.
in France, not French in Francophone Africa.
Definitely French
That's
in
correct.
France. Yeah. And the very first time I started learning, it was actually in Mali, and it was a really great place. My husband went on a 6-week TDY right after we got married. And I just told my work, I was like, I'm going away for 6 weeks. Like, I hope that's okay. And if it's not, I quit. Goodbye. And I remember just wandering around Bamako and talking to people. Unfortunately, back then I could do that. And people were so nice and they enjoyed practicing their English. Going to Saudi Arabia, I studied Arabic beforehand. And even when I was there, and I can't really speak Arabic, but the beauty of it is that people were really appreciative, even just saying hello and thank you and mashallah, and just these little connector words. And just about everybody I interacted with there spoke great English, so I didn't have to rely on it. But there's so many great experiences when you do just kind of put yourself out there and not worry about the mistakes and make friends. Like, and we have a great friend in France who is a retired chef, and it's always lovely to go visit him, but he's somebody that like is so patient and kind, and I just feel so much permission to just try to communicate. And I know I'm not going to get everything right, and it's okay, and we'll figure it out and fill in the blanks. And yeah, it's a really fun part of the experience, I think.
I think most posts around the world have either a language program, or they'll have certainly you can tap into the local community for teachers, or just to teachers, sure, but you can also do Duolingo, and then find some people to just hang out in a coffee shop with and just talk. And it's okay if it's not perfect, and all the things. I do think that's super, super important, and it helps you get you out of the embassy community. Angie, you have a point?
Yes, language is it's a fun part. It's all an adventure, right? I think before you join the Foreign Service, it's going to be an adventure. Whatever's you're going to a new place, you're meeting new people, new friends. And I think if we look at it that way, like you said at the beginning, with manage expectations and just decide that it's going to be a wild ride, all components of it, language, the move, the whole experience. Susie, what about you? I want to hear what's your story of joining the Foreign Service? How did you get here?
Oh my goodness, it's been 25 years. So our first so we joined, it wasn't we at the time, that was BS, which is before Susie. My husband took the Foreign Service exam and then was on the list waiting until he was pulled into the A100 class. And we were dating at the time. And then when he finally got pulled into one of the classes, he proposed, and then we started our adventure. And I still remember our flag day, where you have to like put in where you want to go. And I didn't even know where half those countries were. And it just underscored, and like my parents are immigrants, right? Like, so it's not like I'm not aware that there's another part of the world, but it was just like I didn't really fully understand like what was where, and languages, etc. Which makes me sound really like small world view, but I mean that's oftentimes what people come from in the States. And English is actually my second language, but like I still spoke Hungarian at home and everything, but I didn't really think about like, oh well, if we go overseas, we're gonna have to learn another language. So anyway, it's just kind of that naivete Lisa was referencing. Anyway, so we ended up in Niamey, Niger as our first tour, which I know many people are thinking like, oh my gosh, West Africa. But honestly, like it was by far, I can't imagine a better first post, because you go there and tiny little community, and it is Francophone, so you don't have the luxury of connecting with everyone. It's not a huge expat community. Softball was like the thing. And I just remember like just the experiences were just so rich, and you have so many opportunities because it is a smaller embassy. And our house nobody really wanted the house. It was kind of like the ugly little duckling house, but we loved it, and we just kept it super open and had those parties we referenced before. We had a water reservoir, otherwise known as a swimming pool, which we did actually have to tap into for like water in the house as well, especially to flush the toilet. So it gets so charming, but then these hardships. Angie, you just said like you have to be ready for an adventure, right? And if you come into it with that mindset, I think that everything is not unchallenging, certainly, but it is a new and novel experience that you get through. I remember our second tour was Tanzania, and I remember that there was a couple families that this was their first tour overseas. And I remember thinking like, why would you send someone overseas for the first time to an African country? Not, brand newbie directed assignment. We actually got to bid on our assignment. So we, on purpose, went to Niger. But they were so proud of themselves they lived on a paved road, which was an anomaly in Tanzania at the time. And they were super proud of themselves for trying rice. And they filled their entire consumables with canned vegetables and fruits because they were afraid to try the local fruits and veg. And they would go out to eat only to Subway because there was, and it was just kind of like, but why are you overseas? Like, what are you experiencing that is different from the States? So just to underscore, like, it will 100% be different than the United States. And some ways, like, maybe in challenging ways, like, you don't have power and you have to rely on your generator. And every time the generator switches off and on, your electronic devices will switch off. And then you have to like restart your computer a billion times a day, which is what happened over our weekend that just passed. I mean, it's just these little things that it's like, okay, well, that was challenging. But nothing is so insurmountable that it's not an adventure. So yeah, so we're moving this summer as well to our next and probably last Foreign Service post. And having been here in Sri Lanka for almost 5 years, it's going to be a really hard transition, but looking forward to it. It'll be fun.
Well, and something that I feel like I have learned over the years, because going from a couple different posts, like I remember being sometimes missing being back in the US and being close to family, but also really enjoying the experience of meeting new people and all these travels and experiencing different cultures and countries. I finally came to this realization, which will sound probably pretty basic, but it was just like this really, like, okay, anywhere I live, there's going to be pros and cons. If I was living back in the States, really close to my family, there would be certain things that I loved about it, and then there'd be other things that I didn't like about it. And just to realize anywhere I land in the world, there's going to be pros and cons. There's going to be things I really like about it, and there's going to be things that frustrate me and are really difficult, and I'm going to miss things from other places. And it sounds kind of basic when I say it out loud now, but it was a really huge aha moment for me, and this paradigm shift of there's no perfect place anywhere in the world for me, and that's okay. And this is actually a wonderful thing to live into. And just when I am focused a little bit more on the things that are frustrating, I can make a choice. I can shift my mind and be like, yes, and what is awesome about this? What is amazing? And we just did a weekend trip and saw this, these sites that people save up for 10 years to go to for, the vacation of their life. And for us, it's like, oh, yeah, it's just a weekend, So to remember and shift my mind back into that, I feel like that's been really important, continues to be really important, because now I'm back in the US and I'm like, I don't want to stay here for another 1 to 2 years. So yeah, it's so interesting.
I think that's so important and so true. I think this goes back to that managing expectations that you mentioned earlier. That depending on where you're moving, the more, I don't know if I want to say the ideal posts or the top picks or places that you think you want to go in the world. I don't want to be negative and down on something, but I will say that for us, Costa Rica was our least favorite post of all the places we've been, and it's by far the one that is the most popular vacation spot on our list of places that we live. We've lived in Turkey, we've lived in Bulgaria, Azerbaijan, we've lived in Ukraine, we've lived in Laos, and we've lived in Japan. And so when I said Costa Rica, that is the one that everyone thought like, wow, that's amazing. How incredible. I can't believe you get to go there, and had the biggest reaction of enthusiasm. And living there day to day, we were not living on the beach with a beautiful view. We were in the city with a lot of traffic and a lot of concrete, and life was more challenging there. So I think also you have to be open to the idea that the places that you move, sometimes there's so much fun and connection, and there's a lot of incredible things in places that you didn't expect, right? And so part of it too, I think, is expectations, picturing yourself, like you said, Lisa, like, oh, great, everything will be perfect when we get to point A. Like, our marriage is going to be free of any stress and I don't know, we won't have to worry about family stress at home, and all the things are just going to melt away. That location does not exist, or I haven't found it yet. And then when you're thinking everything is going to be ideal, it's a really hard bar to maintain. When you get there, you're probably going to feel some disappointment, because I don't know if that place exists. I just wanted to include that if you're thinking about where you're moving next or joining the diplomatic community.
Angie, like you said, when you get those popular cushy posts, the flip side is that when you leave there and go somewhere else, you're just so discontented because you've been living such the high life. Where I had the other, experience where the first post was a hardship post. And yes, it's not easy to get adjusted. But what I realized was it really made every other post just my husband, I was like, you're a really smart man, because every country was like a step up in resources. So I couldn't complain, So, but I will say, it's like you have to force yourself sometimes just to pay attention to what is good and just find those things. And I'll tell you, and living in Africa for 17 years, the people are just unbelievable. And what they have taught my children, I am forever grateful. The housekeepers, the drivers, the people at school. I mean, they've just learned so much from being there on the continent to what matters. Because I remember it drive me crazy, like, how come people don't have a to-do list? We need to get things done, and we need to show up in those meetings on time. But the basis is people matter. So if I'm driving to the meeting and I see a few people, I need to chat with them on the way to the meeting. And so learning to respect that and not degrade it was hard for me. But once I did, it was really it made a big difference.
I love, Troy, what you said about the people. Sometimes when, I come back to the States and I'll be talking to friends or family and they'll be like, oh, what's it like? And Saudi was definitely a place because it seems so different from what so many people have experienced. And I remember, I talked about a few of the unique things, and then I would very quickly say, but the people are just people. Like, everywhere we go in the world, like, humans are humans, and we have similar dreams and we have similar desires. We want our kids to be taken care of, and to just like live life and have good connections and community. And that, I think, is one of the most beautiful things about getting to experience different countries, different cultures, different people. And yeah, there's a bunch of differences, and there's all of the similarity of connecting with other humans.
I think it's super important. That connecting piece is so important. Like, we can us them ourselves into like a total corner of isolation. And I feel like you making the deliberate decision to connect with your own community and finding, join the book club, even if you don't like to read, or just finding different ways to meet and connect with different people, be they part of the embassy community, be they part of the school community, be they part of the expat or local community, just to it's amazing the qualities that you get to experience, and I 100% underscore that. Mm-hmm. One of the other things that I realized fairly early on was there's a lot of our cultures and accepted norms from the United States that are so different overseas. And I remember our first tour, and people from Niger are lovely, lovely, lovely. Everywhere we've been, people have been lovely, lovely, lovely. But personal space is a very different concept around the globe. And I remember it's Francophone country. So you're already like, your brain is like, okay, what are they saying? I'm trying to understand. And then in Niger in particular, like they were right in my face talking to me in French. And I'm like, oh, I like you. In my mind, I'm like not even listening. All I'm doing is like freaking out about this person, like right in my face. And that was like my aha moment where I was like, oh, not everything is like the United States, which of course it's not like the United States, but it was just one of those like, oh, I am the one that needs to adjust here. I understand. And it was a super valuable experience. And I feel like every place we've been, although I still very much and am an American personal space sort of a person, but every place we've been, picking up some of their cultures and customs and kind of taking it with me onward. And it's just like something that I keep sort of like art on the wall, but like something I carry with me every day that I can, use as part of my repertoire of responses or communication. And it's just sort of fun, that memento from each place that we've been.
That's so true. I think that I like these stories because part of this, it's like, how did we join the Foreign Service? And then we're thinking about these small lessons. You think about like language learning and designating 9 months of your life to learning that language, like you said, to speak a little bit correctly. And what really turns out to be the most important components of life overseas are these small lessons that you learn from the people. That is true for me too. When we moved to Turkey, I remember that people will take a baby out of your hands, or like a 9-month-old. And when I'm just at the restaurant, and it seemed so freaky to me, like, why is the waitress or the host, the guy that seated us at the restaurant, just picking up the baby and walking around the restaurant? Who is this who's taking my baby? And then it just becomes the most warm and engaging, helpful thing that everywhere you go, somebody's willing to make little faces and hold the baby for you and walk around while you can eat. And then you go back to the States and no one is helping you. The kids are running around, and it's like you learn these things that are foreign to you and strange the first time it happens, and then it becomes part of your understanding. It like widens my scope of recognizing there are different ways to do things, and the way that I was doing it before might have seemed quote unquote right to me. This is the way we behave. And then you realize, wait a minute, that's not even the best way. What was I doing stuck in that small paradigm of the way that I live? And then being able to open to something new. Those lessons have been so important in Foreign Service life.
That's so funny. I remember that from Cambodia as well. But then so appreciating that I finally get to eat a warm meal and not have a baby in my lap. Just with respect to time, I would love, if you lovely ladies would have any sort of last thoughts on your entering story or like adjustment stories. Shoria, anything, last thoughts?
Well, when Angie was talking, just what came to mind is, all the transitions we've been through and just the benefits to see how the transitions of our kids, like how global minded they are, how open they are to friendships. I thought we should do a episode on that. Just how our children are different, because I remember a moment in time where I really like, oh wow, our kids are being raised differently than us. Like there's a part like I can't relate to them. And how we would if our kids were born in the States, we would say, well, when we were growing up, we used to do it like this. And there was some kind of commonality, but I don't know what it is, you know, to go to school with kids from 20 different countries in one classroom, you know, and different things. So, yeah, I see the benefits for us, but oh my gosh, when I look at our kids and just they're 26, 23, and 21, so not quite kids anymore, but I just see how this life has shaped them. And I am so grateful that we dare to join the diplomatic community. And I just wish that for everyone who's listening, like enjoy this thing. It can be difficult, but it's worth it for your children for sure.
Lisa, any last thoughts?
Curiosity comes to mind. And for some people, curiosity is a really natural part of their personality, their upbringing, maybe their world. I grew up in an environment that curiosity wasn't really encouraged in many ways. And so I feel like curiosity is a skill I've had to really learn as an adult. And during our first post, one of my friends there introduced me to the concept of the word, having a word of the year. And I remember identifying curiosity as I need curiosity. This needs to be my word for the year. And it connects for me to some of the things we've talked about, like personal space, like different things that are values in my own culture that I grew up with that I didn't even realize were values until I'm in a different place that has different values. So to be curious, to recognize that I'm going to come with a bunch of cultural values that I may not even realize if I'm moving to a different place for the first time. And I had that aha moment about personal space of like, oh, that doesn't exist here. And also, efficiency is not a value in this culture, and that's okay. So, being curious about that, recognizing the differences, um, and yeah, being curious about myself, being curious about others, I think is foundational.
No, that's a great point. So my final tip would be that, you know, being open to the new experiences, as you just said, Lisa, but also, you know, the things that seem like they would be really hard, like, for example, driving on the opposite side of the road, which we've had to do basically every other tour. They're not actually that hard. And just rather than saying, oh, it's too hard, I don't even want to try, I think it's really important that people, you know, just try it once or twice, and maybe you don't like it, but it's just like when you are trying a new food, right? Maybe you don't like it the first couple times, but trying these experiences more than once and not just writing them off just because they're different or not what you're used to. I do think that that is I think that is a way to help really embrace foreign service life. So unfortunately, Angie dropped off, so we don't have her amazing last tip, but I am sure that she dropped us a lot of really smart nuggets along the way. And thank you both for such great stories and for sharing. And I hope that this is a useful recording for those of you listening and you appreciate some of our stories and can consider how to make your foreign service story always about being curious and grateful for your experiences. And thank you all for listening.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
Susie. Thanks, Sharia. Bye-bye.